Welcome back to the Let's Talk Vibes podcast, where we speak soul contracts, illuminating the path to higher understanding. We're your hosts, Lauren and Yana, and we're joined this week by a wonderful guest, Daniel, the Past Life Regressionist. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. I
I
like your
have
intro.
Thank you. Well, I have to say,
Short and sweet.
I am such a big fan. I feel like I've even modeled our intro after yours because Daniel himself is a host of a wonderful podcast that I've been a fan of for, 2 years now, Timeless Spirituality. And if Timeless gives you any guess of what he may talk about, he is a past life regressionist. So, what you want to give the little intro, your little tagline to your show?
And it's time to begin.
I was thinking about Journey Through Time.
Oh, for when I advertise my services at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
For your
if you
journey
would like
through
to join
time.
me,
Yeah.
man, it's like hard not going with the flow of it. Interesting that we're talking about time and flow. With that said, that's because I always do something cheesy. With that said, if you would like to book a regression with me to discover who, when, and where you have been throughout time, you can reach me on Instagram with the Past Life Regressionist or my website, thepastliferegressionist.com.
Yes.
And now it's time to begin.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love it.
Thank you.
Daniel, as we said, is a past life regressionist. And so what we have decided to do today is really to look at some regressions that you have had with clients and stories that have come up. And then Jan and I are going to go ahead and jump in and talk about what soul contract themes those represent. And it's interesting because something that I always say to people is I can tell you what your soul's intention was through the soul contract, but I can't tell you why that was the intention. And usually I say, you need to go to the Akashic records to find out, or go and have a past life regression and see where this number came up in a past life and maybe why it's coming up now to be dealt with. So it's going to be such an interesting tie-in. I'm so excited to see where this conversation takes us today.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
you got to tell
Wow.
us.
It's so
how...
cool.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just get giddy about all this goofy stuff, this metaphysical stuff.
But that's the beauty of it, right? Because it's something that is so, I don't want to say unique because it's not, it is unique, but like when you find like-minded people who are like, while we're doing different things, we're like in that same umbrella, and you have that pure passion and joy for it. It just like you just say, like, I'm so excited to just talk about it with anybody, because sometimes it can be hard to talk about it with everybody. People don't get it. People are like, okay, whatever. There are sometimes even in the readings where I'll say, okay, in a past life, X, Y, and Z, based on these frequencies. And they're like, okay, and then you move on. And I'm like, no, but I really want that point to land. But with you and what you do, it holds so much more weight because you're like, oh, this is the exact way it played out for you. So why don't you tell us how you even got to this point of having this beautiful gift?
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard it put that way. It's interesting. I like that.
It was beautiful. Okay, good.
I kind of also want to get this out of my system. Like I'm always kind of goofy, but I feel like I'm a different kind of goofy right now because I'm really excited to have this conversation. Because I talk about past lives basically every day, but to be tying in this component of it with the soul contracts and numbers, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is different. So I get really excited for that. So you guys may just hear some of that goofy, giddy enthusiasm when I'm trying to like contain myself at certain points, because it's like, okay, I've talked about this before, but now it's from this point of view. So this is
Yes.
cool. Okay. So how did I come upon this? I mean, I'm going to start off at the beginning. I am super bullheaded. I have been my entire life. And I was someone who always had and still has a firm belief in science. Yet for many years, if science couldn't answer something, then I didn't really give it much thought beyond, oh, that's cool. So I would think about past lives, but since you couldn't prove it, I'm like, okay,
Okay, wait,
you
hold
can't
on.
prove it.
Wait. When you say I would think about past lives, that's not a normal thought that most people have, Right. And I'll be honest, I don't know that I've ever really had that question in my mind. So I want to know about that. Like, where does that even come from, or how did that even come up for you? Because that is not an everyday question that people ask themselves or think about. You're like, I don't know, I
Whoa.
was just there.
Damn, that
Have you never see, it's so
I've never
natural
thought
to
about it
you.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting though, because I 100% agree with Daniel. I was such a logical, analytical person. And yet, and here's my answer, right? Because I also would think about that. I'd be like, do I think that I have past lives? I kind of believe in them, but I also don't believe anything happens in this, like after death. There's clearly these beliefs that don't fit. And the way I've come to think about it is it's like, well, your soul knew. You did on a level know the truth of it. It's just that in the world we were living, in the lives we were living, that didn't fit. But there was a part of you that always knew this truth and knew that this would be your path. And so that belief was there, but there was also a part of you that wasn't ready to believe it yet. Does that resonate at all to maybe how you might have been feeling?
I can see shades of that. I think it
Yeah.
relates more in the sense of Back to the Future was one of my favorite movies growing up. So
Okay.
it's, kind of going along those lines, indulging in ideas that were outside of the norm, because that is science fiction for all intents and purposes. So kind of having those thoughts. So, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily lump reincarnation in with science fiction per se, but maybe at the time it kind of went hand in hand with time travel in that respect, or Star Trek and aliens, because it was cool to think about, but can't prove it yet. And the government hasn't acknowledged aliens, so not going to spend a lot of time thinking about that. Same thing, past lives. We don't learn that in school, so I'll think about it while I'm bored, but I'm not going to treat it as a truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my early 20s, I came down with an autoimmune disorder. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, my rigid belief system was telling me Western medicine's the way, Western medicine, Western medicine. So I pursued that path.
Yeah.
And I mean, not professionally, but just to find a remedy.
Mhm.
Right.
And I kept coming up short. I just was not getting better. So I finally had to let go of my rigidness and say, I may have to explore alternative treatments. Long story short, past life regression fell into my lap and I gave it a try. And it changed my life. Admittedly, it did not heal me. I just need to be very clear about that.
Right. That
But
was my next question.
I think it gave me something that was much more profound, though, which was a shift of perspective. I think had I been healed, it just would have been, okay, that's it. Yeah, I'll tell people about this. This is really cool. But it would have been too easy and too simple. So what ended up happening for me that day, my first regression, is like, still, I couldn't tell you for a fact that it was real, but it felt so real that I firmly believed in past lives. And
Mhm.
therefore, I became a believer of future lives by default. Now, of course,
Mm.
this is when I was viewing time in a linear sense. We can get into that at some point, probably not in this part of the conversation,
Oh, that could be an
but,
entire own episode because I love that conversation.
and that shift was just everything, a perspective of, no longer believing I was just contained to one existence or one life. So I walked away saying, all right, you know what? These are the cards that I've been dealt this time around. Next time it could be better, it could be worse. So how am I going to play those cards in this life? So I no longer felt like a victim of my circumstances anymore. And it was just, how do I work with this? And so it just kind of led me on this journey to then become a past life regressionist, which was in 2016. And I've been doing it ever since. And it's, nothing really surprises me anymore, but there's always something new. Just when I think that, I think I've seen it all, the universe is just saying, all right, hold my beer. We got something
Yeah.
else for you.
Well, I feel like the natural question is what's the most recent regression that you've given to a client that ended up surprising you? The most recent surprise.
Surprise?
Unexpected.
Or maybe
Out of the
a hold my
ordinary.
beer moment,
Yes.
or your favorite regression that you've done.
Oh, favorite's easy. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with regards to what my soul contract looks like, but I think this is where I incorporate the element of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because my favorite session happened 7 years ago. And it was, I believe I talked about it in episode 25 of the podcast, which was called The Heart Goes On. And it was a session I had with a woman named Kaylee. And, you know, I'm very tight-lipped about what I do with my clients. But in this situation, since she's come on the podcast and talked about it, and I've gone on her platforms and talked about it, so it's like I'm okay saying her name. So I just want anyone to know, if you come and have a session with me, I'm not telling anyone unless you come on and
I have a
share
random
your story
question.
yourself.
Is she Australian?
No.
Okay. I'm done. Go ahead.
Thought you might know her.
Yes.
No, would that be a small world?
Yes.
It's possible. Okay, sorry. We all digressed.
Yeah.
So Kaylee had lost her fiance a few months prior to when I met her. And we did a session. And in the session, she saw that her and her fiance had been together in other lives. And it just, I mean, it was so moving to see that happen just right in front of me. Just someone coming to this realization that they don't have to let go, but they can move on to a certain extent. And also at the time, I was still relatively new as a practitioner. So I was all about the glitz and the glamour. It was like, okay, is this going to be an alien regression today? Is this going to be an ancient civilization? And I would be very disappointed when those sessions didn't happen. But when that session happened, it just shifted the way that I viewed what I did. And I saw that this is what's important. These moments where someone can come to this understanding or this realization that they will be together again. And no amount of just cool cerebral stories can match that level of heart. And I don't know if any session will be able to top that one because of, I think it was just all of the circumstances, surrounding it. I'll add on a couple other layers to that. I was in Israel at a wedding when I met Kaylee, and I was friends with her roommate, and I hadn't seen her roommate in years. So when I ran into her at the wedding, we were talking, and I told her what I did. She said to me, "Oh, you have to meet my roommate. She's into all of that stuff." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to, but I'm leaving tomorrow morning." And she said to me, "No, she's here at the wedding." I'm like, "Really?" So that's where I met Kaylee, at the wedding. And as the night went on, I had to do a session with her. So I said to her, "We're doing this tomorrow morning.
Oh my
I'm coming to your
goodness.
place with all of my luggage, and we're doing this thing tomorrow morning." And then, Kaylee and I developed a friendship. So I've done more regressions with her since that one. And her fiance popped up in another regression and kind of gave her that feeling of the man that she was to be with. And, she ended up meeting someone. And so I'm a musician as well. And Kaylee asked me to perform at her engagement party.
Oh.
So just, it's all of that, the feeling of being there with her in Israel and helping her find the next part of her life, whatever that may be. And then her going on that journey, and then having her ask me to come perform, and being there and just feeling a part of it. It felt right. And that really just changed things for me, and seeing that this is what's important. And with the responsibility component, I think in my line of business, especially now since things are becoming much more mainstream, which I think is great.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that sells, is the flashy, the aliens and lost civilizations, and just I think that that's the flashy stuff. And it's that part of me with the responsibility component of not wanting to play on that too much.
Right.
And not to come on here right now and bring up all of those stories, because I feel the most responsible thing to do is be honest about what I feel is the most profound, and that is the ones that have to do with heart. And that's why I don't think anything will ever top that session.
Okay,
Well,
Daniel.
Yana, what number has to deal with heart? Because there's one number that's been playing in my mind.
Yes, but I'm not going there just yet. My
Okay.
question is, because I know the answer to this, Daniel, are you a hopeless romantic?
Uh, I was.
You,
I very much was.
okay. That to me screams 8-8 all day long, which is in your physical karma. Now, I have that in my spiritual karma, so I understand how that feels. It's like this, you romanticize and you're like, oh God, what it'd be like to be with somebody. And when you're with them, it's like, it's going to look X, Y, and Z, and it's going to be that fairy tale. It's going to be so good. And the reality is, most of the time, it's not exactly what we romanticize, and that kind of breaks us. But
Yeah.
it is this like hopeless romantic. So when you said your favorite story is the one that was like touching and was like all heartfelt, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, he's a hopeless romantic. Listen, like sees like, I see you, I feel you.
Oh, I mean, you nailed it right there.
Yeah, so that's
You
exactly
totally
what
nailed it.
that's the first thing I picked on. But of course, the heart frequency is at 7,
Yeah.
right? So you've
Working
got
with
that
and
in there.
healing the heart.
Hmm.
And it's,
But
it's interesting on that vein. I also think of the 7 because they're also about being in dreamland, and that's my physical karma. So when it's in physical karma, especially, it's like you are very not clear sometimes on like the realities of the physical world. I'm just very, and I have Pisces energy. So I always say it's my Pisces energy, but it's also my 7s. I'm just like in my fantasy land. So those 7s and 8s, they live in the fantasy land together.
Do you mind if I share a quick story about that?
Please.
So, Yana, like you nailed it with regards to I don't know. I consider myself to be a pragmatic idealist, but I always had this image of like what a fairy tale may look like, and if I was ever going to live out that fairy tale. And love has not come easy to me,
Mhm.
which has always been a bit perplexing. Let's put it that way. Uh, because I'm like, I'm not a complete pariah. I'm a solid 6. I'm not, I'm not bad looking. I don't get it. I mean, sure, I could be a little abrasive at times. And it was very perplexing. And I used to sit on my balcony looking out at the stars and just thinking, I really want to share this with someone. And I want it to be someone who can meet me on that level and get excited about the stars the way that I do.
hmm
And I now have a girlfriend who drives me absolutely bonkers. She's amazing in every way, shape, and form. Uh, totally, yeah, like I said, drives me crazy. And I was hanging out with her about 2 months ago, and we were standing on the balcony at her house, overlooking the pool, and it started to rain. And she started talking about the drops of water and how we're looking at it from a higher vantage point.
Mm.
What it must look like to see things from a different vantage point. And I realized in that moment that I had everything I wanted. It just
Yeah.
didn't come in the way that I thought it would. So when you asked me about being a hopeless romantic, that's why I said I was, because being with her, I kind of let go of the notion of the fairy tale. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
being completely a fairy tale. And like I said, she's great, but I don't think any relationship is,
Totally.
you
Yes,
know,
totally.
so I don't want
We
to be
love
like,
you, girlfriend.
yeah, right. I
Yeah.
came on here and just said horrible things about her. Um, but I realized in that moment that I don't think anything is ever going to look perfect, but this is what I wanted. And I'm so lucky to have that.
Mm,
Yeah.
And I let go of the stereotypical image of the fairy tale at that point. And I
that's
realized I
beautiful.
was living out a different one.
Yeah. That's so wonderful and so important, especially with the eights being in your karmic placement, the challenge. It is one of those energies where like it's the Cancer, right? So you're talking about water. It's all about emotions. And maybe you had a tough time processing emotions when you were younger. Maybe you still do. I'm not sure. Maybe you hold them up here and they don't drop down to your heart. But the whole point is
Have you
like
been talking to my girlfriend?
but um the whole point of it is it's like they're in dreamland, they're in fantasy world, and they want to like they cling on to that fantasy, so they cling on to that person in their life, that relationship. And it's like even though it's not working, you're like, but it can, and I want to try, and they can't let go. And it's like once you let go of that, and then it's almost like prioritizing your needs, what I want, it's going to come to me. I'm going to let it go. Just let it go. Because eights want to hold on to everything. And you let it go. And then before you know it, the eights, they feel like they're out of place. Okay. Like they haven't found their tribe. And all of a sudden, you're standing on this balcony overlooking the pool, the rain starting. You got this woman next to you, and you're like, oh, I got it. I got it. Like, this is it. And it's such a beautiful feeling as a romantic. You still are, even though you say you're not, you still are.
Oh, I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm hopeless anymore though.
No, but still, it's like, it's such a beautiful thing. But yes, if your emotions are still up here, let's get them working down and let them go because it'll be so good for you.
Can I ask you guys something about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would I put it? Is there that potential in my chart to drop it from the head to the heart?
Yes.
Well, I would say that the fact that that number is in your chart is saying that it's asking you to do that. So that number being there is both the challenge, but asking you to work through it. So that 8 is the potential because it's the most grounded. So this is the thing with the numbers, is that depending on where it is in your chart is usually where you're starting, whether you're starting from a point of being there or the point of not, because arriving there is the journey and the lesson and the challenge and the intention for this lifetime. So yes, the fact that it is a challenge is also the potential to achieve it in your chart.
I'll let her know.
Well, we can give you some recommendations, like work on your grounding, work on getting in your body.
Come
What?
get some divine healing. We'll make you cry.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm game for that, but the whole grounding thing, I have six placements of Earth in my natal chart for astrology. So
That's amazing.
I don't know how to do anything other than be grounded.
Well, there's being grounded as in being pragmatic, right? But
Yeah.
then there's actually getting into your body and, feeling in your body. And I think, you share about having had a chronic illness.
Yep.
Perhaps there was a time that your body was just not a comfortable place to be in and you were not in it. So there's different ways to be grounded. And so you might be grounded as in realistic and relatable, which is what the 8 is all about, being relatable. And I think you're very much that. And that, kind of being, like you say, pragmatic and logical, practical. But then there's physically grounding into your physical body. And maybe that's the part you're here to work on.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, those eights
I
tell
can see
us
that.
that your body is like one of your biggest things this lifetime. Like your body, healing it, working with it, listening to it. All of that is like, this is all part of your healing. Okay. So always pay attention to your body and what it's trying to tell you. There is this, I'm not going to remember the name of it, but I will mention it later. It's like this encyclopedia of different ailments. And every ailment that you experience.
Messages from the body?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to get it. But every ailment you experience has a mental emotional component to it, which hello AIDS. Okay. So it tells you why you're experiencing this physical symptom in your body and how to what the emotion and is associated with it and how to release that. I'm going to
think I
share
have
it
that
with
book.
you. Okay, you do?
Like the complete dictionary. It's a blue book, like the complete dictionary
Yes.
of, yeah.
Yes, of
I
something.
think it was written by some French dude or something like that, right?
I have it too, and I'm gonna get it when we're done with this. I'm gonna get it and we'll share it.
So I was like, look up. Type
Okay,
that there.
but
It's
do you
looking over my
actually look at
bookshelf.
it?
It's been a couple of years.
Oh my god. Okay, I guess divine healing it is. We're gonna get you crying and you're gonna love it. It's gonna feel so good. Your aides are gonna be like, thank you.
I just gotta say, this podcast is awesome. I love what you guys are doing. Or this is great.
Oh, thank you so much. We've put a lot of our own heart and passion into this. Jan
This
and
is
I are
cool.
both Aries suns, so we bring that fire and that passion. So, yeah.
Yes.
I like it. I love what you guys are doing.
Well,
So
you know,
I'll toot your horn more when we're done.
thank you so much. Well, you know, this was not meant to be about you and your relationships, but there is another number that stands out to me as maybe why relationships have been difficult for you. Do you want to go there a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, so it's the soul destiny number that you have, the 14-5, and the 14 is this mirror and this reflector. And you're able to reflect back to people that which they're hiding and keeping hidden about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that process of having that just clear as day reflected back to them is really intense for both parties. And so they have these really intense relationships. And the 14-5, they spend their life, their journey is to discover who they are. So your whole thing, discover who you have been throughout time. You're also here to discover who you are in this life. And part of how you learn that is through those intense relationships. They teach you a lot about who you are.
And when you say intense relationships, are you just talking about personal dynamics or is it my work with clients as well?
All of the above.
Yeah, I would say, you know, the deeper than that connection, probably the more that is revealed and the more intense. But there's sort of that potential could be even maybe just like with that random stranger on the bus, if you happen to sit next to each other and strike up a conversation, even that could kind of have some intensity to it.
I try to avoid those for that reason.
Yeah.
Anytime that happens, people end up crying.
Yeah.
I have a question about that 14-5. And okay, I'm assuming that you've done enough regressions for yourself that you know about many, many lifetimes that you've experienced, correct? Yeah. Okay.
I believe so.
Were you a shaman in any of those lifetimes?
Yeah.
Shaman-esque.
Shaman-esque, yeah.
Okay. Because that 14-5 in the soul destiny also shows in a bigger picture, it is like in previous lifetimes, you've been that shaman, you've been that person, you've been that healer. So that's why I want to know if that has shown up for you. But you're saying it has in like similar elements, just not shaman.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've worked with the unseen and just kind of tapping into things, you know, whatever form that may be.
Okay.
So, I mean, unless I could be way off with shaman. I don't even know if I know the actual definition of a shaman.
Right.
Listen, I think a
So
shaman.
when you say shaman, what do you mean?
It's a natural healer and he works with the earth and herbs and all that to help not perform healings because you can only heal yourself. No one else can heal you. But it's something along those terms, and nobody in the comments kill me on my definition of a shaman. But we can always circle back to that. But then that makes me think, from the lifetimes that you know that you've had, is there one particular aspect of a single one that you're like, oh, I love that. That one was my favorite. Or no?
is where I'm gonna be non-flashy right now. My favorite goes to the ones I'm most disappointed in.
Yeah.
The ones where I could have done better. That's where I put a lot of my attention, because I've been in those positions where I could influence. And I like to call some of those lives never mind, I was going to make some full overgeneralized statement, but there's a certain placement in astrology or a certain sign that, people associate with look at me, look at me, look at me.
Okay, you're talking
And
about us. We got it.
oh, no. One of the other ones, like you guys.
Okay, just say it.
Leo. I
I
said
didn't
it.
say it. Yeah.
I
Okay,
said
fine.
It's all Lauren. Yeah. You guys, any Leos in the comments, go after Lauren for that one. I didn't want to say anything.
It's the archetype. It's not you, but that's the archetype of the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's higher and lower octaves of everything. So,
Yeah.
and I just happened to express those lower octaves at the time.
Okay.
So it was, it's not for all of those lives, but for a lot of them, it was being in that position of authority or power and operating from a place of ego instead of uplifting people.
Well, can I
Right.
say actually how perfect it is that you brought up Leo? Because every number within the soul contract system correlates to either a sign or a planet in astrology.
Mhm.
And Leo correlates to the number 9, which is the most powerful number of this system. And if you have this number in your chart, which I have this as my spiritual karma, so I get that this is about me.
High five.
It is it is often an indication of a misuse of power in a past life. Now, a similar number with a similar theme is the 10-1, because it's also very much about power and integrity. And that's what you were kind of hinting at before, because we already told you have this 10-1 in your chart. So you're kind of getting at that responsibility, the integrity piece for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so with both of these numbers, if they show up, it can represent there was probably a misuse of power in a past life. And I already know that you have a great story that is an example of that. Do you want to talk about your life as a king?
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Your
Which
Royal
one?
Highness.
The tyrant. The tyrant.
You got to be more specific than that.
Well, I guess I don't know which one then. Pick one of them where you did not use your power well.
Like, which
Which
time?
one?
I mean, are we talking about one that I brought up? Well, probably be on the podcast, right?
Well, I mean, I guess I didn't realize there was more than one. I think there's been a story about, you're passing like something that you did, and then you basically put someone, I think, to death, or something about you didn't give them money. Like you had this power to help and you didn't. And it's like, as a ruler, you just were very selfish and you did not help your people. You did things for yourself. I'm trying to remember. No, am I misremembering these stories? Am I mixing them together?
I think that was one of the ones that was told to me. I think that was told to me
Okay.
by a guest that I had on who was
Okay.
a channeler.
Okay.
So, yeah, I try to only talk about the ones which I've experienced.
Okay.
But I think you're talking about the one where it was like I could have given someone bread,
Yes.
something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's child's play compared to some of the other stuff I've seen.
Oh,
So where
my
that ego
goodness.
comes in now, like that's something else I'm working on. Is although I'm not proud of those lives, there's a part of me it's like, yeah, helps me. Like,
But are you ashamed of them?
Yeah, I am, and I'm not,
Right.
because I understand the separation. That
Yeah.
those people weren't me, but they were.
Yeah.
But I only hold the shame if I repeat those actions in this life.
Right.
Yes. I
And
totally relate to that.
and like it's like there are some where this is also one of those times when the level of responsibility I'm trying to operate from is horrible for a podcast, because I could illustrate it for you guys right now, like some of these lives and bring up some of these situations. But my fear in that is, would someone want to work with me just because I said I was at one of those things or those events? Like, oh, I want
Mm.
that dude to be my past life regressionist because he was there. And you know, like it's being aware of the world that we live in right now, and that I could play to the flashy side and benefit materially from it.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I have heard stories of things that I've been at, and I am ashamed to say there is a part of me that does feel a sense of pride and power when I hear about the horrible things that those people did.
Mm.
And this is the first time I think I'm actually publicly saying this, and it's embarrassing because here I am kind of preaching the opposite of you're not what you did. But I wonder how much of that I've carried in with me, and that feeling of they're still talking about something I did.
Yeah. But you know
And
what? You're only human, and it's so natural to feel that way. And we do have ego. And this is what I always talk about with the nines, right? Because again, Leo is so tied to the sense of pride and ego can go both
Mhm.
ways, right? Ego can be overblown. And as I like to say it, overfed. But if you starve your ego and give it nothing, no food, it's going to get so fearful. That's also not a place we want to be. You want to find that happy medium, and
Mhm.
sometimes just recognizing the ego and saying, hey, ego, I see that you feel this way. And you know what? It's really natural that you do. And I don't have any hard feelings that you feel that way. But you know what? I'm not going to continue to act on that feeling. I'm not going to carry that forward. Like, it's so natural. It's a journey.
You're right. And I mean, I wish that I was a little nicer to myself in that respect, because there's an episode that I did on the podcast called Has He Been Humbled that's popping up for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an episode where I talked about one of these lives. And at the time, I thought, just because I'm not talking about, specifics of this life, that means I have been humbled. As time went on and I listened to it again, I was like, oh, D, you're such a fool. You are such a fool. You have not been humbled. And that man has most certainly not been humbled if you still haven't found a way to not be humbled by the experience of of separation.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's these moments also right now where I'm vastly aware that I'm doing this in front of an audience. And now I'm like, do I backpedal somehow? Because it's does this challenge the authority that I'm doing my best not to project? Because I approach my practice as someone who's been doing this since 2016. I don't act like
Mm-hmm.
someone who's been doing it since 2015 or 2017. I come at it from that angle of I've been doing it as long as I have. But
Right.
does that challenge that experience right now by me being the one coming out here and being like, oh, I am so not good at the things that I encourage people to do. And so I think that's the shame that I feel as opposed to
Yeah.
the actions of those people.
And you know what? I just feel like the fact that you can come and share that, and thank you so much for that vulnerability and sharing, is that to me is the 8-8 and the relatability aspect. And that to me is why, with the nines and the 10-1s, especially we talk about it so much with the nines of, don't put your teachers on pedestals and don't put
Mhm.
yourself on a pedestal. And for me, that does show, that you're not putting yourself on a pedestal because you're being really honest and saying, I am still a student,
Mhm.
which brings us to another number in your chart. The 12-3 is the forever student. The 12 is always learning and always growing and expanding. And the 3 in its teacher from the soul, and I have this number in my soul destiny, the 3 can feel so unworthy. And I think that's where that shame can really, really come in and get triggered, is with that 3 energy. So we just want to applaud you, because there's
Thank you.
7s in this chart, you know, and the 7s really want to hide. The 3s really want to hide. A lot of these numbers can really want to hide. And so just have that space for yourself to notice you do want to hide, but there's also no need to hide.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me how there's energy behind our names and what we're coming in with, because I think back to, 5 years ago at this point, before I was more public about what I was doing, and I was tearing myself up from the inside, wanting to have conversations like this. But I was so afraid to go out there and speak about these things. And it was so much safer because I didn't need to face scrutiny from the outside.
Right.
And then that shifted. And whatever scrutiny I've faced in the last 5 years, God, I'm so much happier with it than I was not being public about what I was doing. Like that internal just strife was much more debilitating than the fear of the mob that
Right.
Still present. You don't, if your hand, like I'm not perfect even in what I do as a past life regressionist. There are many times I could have done much better in sessions, but if you're doing it right, you're going to piss people off, the people you're working with. And the ones who I respect are the ones who can acknowledge why they're pissed.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones who don't understand why they're pissed and they project it on you, they're the ones who are dangerous. And that's the feeling. And it's not, and when it's people I'm working with, I don't just even equate that to a one-on-one. It's coming on this platform right now. And it's just, you say the wrong thing, that you don't do it in a malicious sense. It's coming from an honest place. It's pure of heart. And it still pisses someone off. And so there's a fear that's there with that. And, and the missteps that, that come with that. And I even told you guys right before we hit record that I was going to record this on my phone as well. Just on my end, because I like to scrutinize the things that I'm doing.
I didn't know this.
Well, I said,
she must have not paid attention.
Yeah, Lauren, you heard it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I want to let you guys know that I was recording, so.
Well, listen,
and I didn't want to be sneaky about it.
Of course. And that's the
I don't know why I went off on that tangent.
No, but that's the integrity part of you in that 10-1, which I want to talk about with you. But also, we live in a time right now where cancel culture is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you blink the wrong way, it's like there's a saying, and it goes, if you are looking to be offended, you will be offended. And people are just looking for a reason to cancel someone. And it's like, you can't cancel people. I still exist. You can't cancel me. So then what happens is it creates this fear you're talking about, where people are like, I can't show up authentically because someone's going to judge it. And especially when you're talking about spiritual stuff where people can't see, feel, or touch the thing you're talking about, that you're like, no, this is actually something I do, then they scrutinize you even more. Yeah. So I too had that journey over the last almost 1.5 to 2 years, where it's like professionally, I stepped out of that 3D world and went into the 5D world. And I kind of did it quietly without people really knowing what was happening, until I was able to stand in that power and say, this is who I am. If you don't like it, I wish you the best. The door is over there. If you come back, that's great. And if not, that's okay too. Because with that, you have a 16-7 in your spiritual talents. That 7, while it is that heart number, it's all about you being authentic, you showing up authentically you. And like, it's like no excuses. I'm not holding back. This is who I am. And if you like it, great. And if not, that's okay too. You know, but tying in that past life thing, you talked about how, and it's funny because I watched this also play out with a close girlfriend of mine. That 10-1, it's such a powerful number, right? Very, very high frequency. But what it tells us in a previous lifetime is you have misused that power. Okay. So because it's in your spiritual karma, that tells me in this lifetime, you are to show up with integrity. You are to show up and not let greed be a thing. So what I've noticed with people who have that 10-1 in a karmic challenging aspect is when something comes their way, that first instinct is, ooh, I could really do something really major, really powerful with this, really greedy, really whatever. I'm not, but like that thought comes in, and it almost is very like, it's almost like this exciting moment of like, oh my God, the things I could do. I will not do them because I'm stepping in a place of integrity and doing the right thing, right? You're here to be of service to people. You're here, it's like you're this natural healer, but it's like that creeps in, and it's so funny that you expressed it, because I'm like, yeah, that is what I see people feeling when they have that placement, and it cracks me up. I have the 10-1 too, but mine's in a different placement. We all actually have it. We talked about
Well,
that.
it's his physical talent. How
Oh,
does
why
that
do I
change your
have it in
perception?
his? No, but okay, fine. Even though it's in your talent, but the point is you
Yes,
still have some of that karmic challenge
there is.
aspect
Yeah.
in there, right? So you
Mhm.
just perfectly demonstrated it, how it can show up. And it just cracks me up because I get it. It's almost like I could feel the moment for you where you're like, I could totally run with this, but I'm not.
The karmic component is interesting. I, I'm very intrigued by that because I mean, a lot of the things I'm going to say right now are going to seem very woe is me. Like, oh, poor guy who's a past life regressionist going and doing this. And I'm very fortunate that I get to go out and do what I do,
Yeah.
and I enjoy what I do. I I get to have conversations like this. These are basically every day, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Sure, we can talk about the weather, but oh, it's warm today. Okay,
And
done.
talk about past lives.
Right. And I know that most people listening to this right now, well, this is where I'm going to back up because it's like, okay, the integrity part, where a lot of the message that I try to put out there is one that I learned from
Yeah.
my astrology teacher. Just want to give him a shout out. His name is Jim Scher. He just came out with the book. It's great. Wish I remember the title of it off the top of my head. Go check it out on Amazon. It looks at astrology in a different way. But one day he posed the question, what's the difference between believing and knowing? And that's where I need to now back up and say, I believe that most people who are listening to this show are not in the position that I'm in where they get to have these conversations every day. So it's like, oh, poor guy who goes or gets to go out there and talk about past lives all the time and do these things that I wish that I could do. It's like I'm very well aware that I'm privileged in that respect.
Yeah.
And the karmic component, I think, comes up just like where you're talking about the greed aspect of once that idea pops in, it's like, oh, the sky is the limit with this. Like, oh my God, but oh, that wouldn't be right. Oh,
Right.
that wouldn't be, oh, but then what would I be gaining from that? Oh, that wouldn't be right. And it's a self-imposed prison that I keep myself in by not playing the game in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then where's the line between how do you operate with integrity and show up and kick some ass? Because I see how I'm limiting myself by being like, okay, got to downplay that because, don't want to be one of those people. But then it gets into that judgy space. And look, I'll be the first to admit I'm not above judgment. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, no, I just came out of my cave and I'm not judging anyone. When you do a
Sure.
session with me, I'm not judging you. You can tell me anything and I'm not going to look at you either way because you've shown up to work on yourself and you have earned my respect once you've done that. But anyone else out in the world, you're fair game. So,
Okay,
so
so
it's,
so let me ask you this. So with that statement, have you found that since doing your work, has that softened that judgment of everyone in the world fair game? Has that softened at all by doing your work?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It is softened in the respect that I am more compassionate towards people in general. Because I get to know people on a level that most people don't.
Right.
Because not only do I get to learn about who they were in a past life, but I also get to learn who they are in this life. Because the way a session works is we start off with a pre-session where you would tell me your entire life story as much as you want to divulge from birth up until today. So that way I can understand the patterns of this life. So when you're experiencing whatever it is you're experiencing in your session during the regression, I'll be able to say, okay, let's explore this a little more because I understand the patterns. So by doing that, there are, people I've worked with who are more public figures and people who I had seen before, I met them or whatnot, and they project an image, whether or not it is fully authentic or it's them, just use your imagination for that. And then you get to see that there's a lot behind that. And then, even for people who I haven't seen out there, when they sit across me initially, I may feel a certain way or think, okay, this is the way this is going to go. And then I'll see that, oh, this person isn't like that at all.
Yes.
This is,
yes.
And I have much more compassion for people out on the street now. And my favorite story to tell in that respect is when I used to be at the grocery store and I would be behind someone who was slow or someone behind the register that was slow. And I'd just be like,
let's go. Let's go.
Just that, whatever it may, and you're just use your imagination. Any 4-letter word, I was saying it in my head and just like, yeah. But now it's when those situations pop up and the level of compassion comes in for that person's circumstances, and then I try to offset it with humor and saying, well, at least I'm not a moron this time. So it's helped soften my edges in that respect because I don't feel that boiling feeling. It's like whatever. But I think where my jadedness has increased is by not also cutting people slack and playing the game of self-righteousness internally. Oh, I wouldn't do that. How dare they do that? How dare they do what I wouldn't do? And it's, because I'm in their position now. And
okay, so in those moments where you're like, oh, how dare I would never do that or whatever, then do you catch that thought and you're like, oh, I'm being judgmental, I'm just gonna let it go and take it back? Or are you like, no, they should?
And this is where like that karmic component comes in, is I do my best to not completely live in the world, even though I want to live in the world fully presently. And what I mean by that is I'm a citizen of the world. The rules apply to me just like they apply to everyone else. If I don't make money, I don't eat. I have a body. There are needs that need to be met in order to continue to exist. And at the same time, I'm doing my best to view life from a different vantage point and not be so now, even though I think it's about being in the moment, but not viewing time as a constant forward motion. And by doing that, it's seeing when I believe I'm operating with integrity, that I'm doing the right thing. I'm probably earning points. By the way, I don't think that anyone is completely altruistic. I don't think that any action is completely selfless, because even on a subconscious level, I mean, I believe that there are karmic points in the sense that we're racking up. So on that unknown level, it's like, oh, I did it. You know, so the conscious level, I did this for someone else. Maybe. But on that other level, ooh, I'm racking up those points. So I try to see doing the right thing from that point of view of I'm doing the right thing because it's about the totality and also just simply doing the right thing. But then the judgmental part comes in with the material side of it, where I could come on platform right now, you know, on your show, and I could be selling the entire time. I could be talking up the service the entire time. I could be picking the lives that I know are going to tickle the cerebral parts of the brain, and where someone's be like, ooh, that's the experience I want to have. Ooh, I want to come away feeling like I could float on a cloud. But am I doing that for the right reasons? And that's the place where I get stuck is, and I don't know if self-righteous is the right way to paint that, but you know, I see that as me being somewhat self-righteous. And that's what's hard. That's that part where I've become more jaded.
Right.
Well, I mean, for me, also having a 10-1 in my chart, I think about that a lot, you know, that's sort of the integrity that doesn't fit to my integrity. And I guess in some ways, everyone could kind of define integrity a little bit differently. They're going to have their own barometer of integrity. But the way I interpret that is like for you, that just is like, that doesn't fit for me, you know, to use my power with integrity.
I agree. And I guess
you want to agree, right? It's like
that's the problem is I agree, but can I let myself just sit back and relish the notion as opposed to wanting to slam my head, you know, through a refrigerator door.
Yeah.
Which would just be foolish because the refrigerator is going to win every time.
Yeah.
So,
would you say that some anger boils up in you? Is that maybe what you feel in those moments? A lot.
It's being in the position that I am, I get the privilege of speaking to parts of someone or something that most people don't get access to. And I think I'm realizing is a lot of my idealism comes from the way that it is on some level, and that I do live in an idealized notion of what it could be while still like, so, you know, I'm a pragmatic idealist. I get it. I get the way that the world works, but I wish that people would be rewarded for doing the right thing when we're not. And it's a shame. Like, it really is a shame. So that's where that where that anger just, it's there.
And the reason I ask about anger is because the 16-7 that you do have in your chart, that's the spiritual karma. The 16 is about anger, and it represents anger. And part of it is learning that anger can be purifying and learning how to allow yourself to feel the fire of that anger and allow it to purify those feelings. And so this is something I have in my chart. It's a rarer number. I have it as my spiritual goals. And so something that I have started to do, and this is what a lot, especially that 7 is, you know, one of our communication numbers. You have 5s in your chart, communication, the 3, communication. So what I'm starting to allow myself to do is just to express that. And sometimes, like, I yell at spirit, I get mad at spirit, I get mad at my soul. I allow myself to express it rather than pretending like it's not there, because somehow, you know, in our society today, right, it is so shameful often to feel anger. Especially as women, we're supposed to tap that down. Men have a little bit more freedom of expressing that, but it's like I'm really learning that sometimes just to even admit that I feel that way and just to say the thoughts that are in my mind out loud to the walls is all that I need to just kind of feel it purify and not kind of like burn me from the inside.
You know what that means, Daniel? You're going to have to start feeling your feelings.
Expressing your feelings.
It's interesting you brought up the anger, because I think that's the first step. I realized about a year and a half ago that, let me even back up a little further. I was always angry inside growing up, and it was not something I outwardly expressed, because, if you express your emotions, you get punished for it in one way or another.
Yeah.
And I suppressed it. And when I had my first regression, I feel like all of that anger was alleviated. And it was no longer a part of my life anymore. So I then began to really pride myself upon that. Like, oh, I don't have anger anymore. Oh, it's gone. And as the years went on, I realized that, no, you've just been suppressing it. It was that pride that prevented me from addressing anything that came up, and just saying, oh no, I'm above anger now. And I'm not. And I think that's the gateway, is that moment when I realized that, oh yeah, I should be pissed. Maybe there aren't any shoulds in this circumstance, but I should be feeling something right now, and I'm not. And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So feeling that anger is that first problem. And then I think the fear becomes, well, if I really feel it, will I be able to control it? And I like to think that I can. I'm pretty sure I can. I think I'm okay with that. I think I have that level of self-awareness to identify when it's coming up. But I think that fear is there. Just what would happen if anything that's been bottled up just came to the surface. So again, I probably doesn't make me look good if someone is supposed to help with, the spiritual stuff. Some dude talking about, oh, can I control my anger? Like,
I think what happens is,
sorry, was that wrong? Should I not have?
No, that's beautiful, because I'll tell you,
it's authentic.
It leads to this next thing. People think that because you are spiritual, because you have started on your journey and you're trying to connect to source and do the right thing and work on yourself and heal, that you can never have anger, that you can never make a mistake, that you are just always supposed to be this like altruistic person. And it's like,
never have pride and ego.
Right. And it's like, people are like, well, somebody has this gift, how come they don't, for example, clairvoyance, right? Well, if someone is psychic or clairvoyant, how come they don't have the lottery numbers? Because they're all human and they have their own shit to go through too. Like, that's not how that works. We all have to go through our things. Every single human being. Everybody has anger. Everybody has joy. Everybody has every single emotion. You're not exempt from it. You're not right or wrong from it. You are right or wrong depending on how you use it and how you express it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I will say, I think we're coming into a time where people are connecting to other people from a very authentic place. So it's not about coming here and you saying all the right things for people to be like, oh my God, I want to work with Daniel. No, people are going to connect with the authenticity of who you are. And then they're going to think about that next step about connecting with you with your services. When people find that connection nowadays, I've noticed, they're like, oh, what do you do? I want to try it. Because they relate to you. You become relatable. And they're like, oh, he's just like me. I definitely don't have anger stuff maybe to your level, but maybe it's because I also process all my stuff. I feel everything.
Who the hell do you think I am?
No, what I'm saying is everybody has it, and it's just a matter of using it in a beautiful way, and if anyone's
Like, oh
gonna
my
judge
God, let's talk about the anger. It was like a 3. Have I made it sound like a 10? I'm sorry
no,
for
no, I'm
cutting
just
in.
using that as the example because that's the example you gave. But it's like we all have it in us, everybody. So don't to sit here and think someone's gonna judge or criticize. Okay, if you do, you're not my person. you are not my person because you are just so self-righteous. You can't understand that I'm having the same exact emotion and experience as you are, but I'm supposed to be in this other level, which goes back to where you said in the beginning, Lauren, where you're, oh, I don't know if this was before we're recording, where it was like, don't put anybody on a pedestal in life. Nobody. I don't care who it is. Everybody is equal. We're all the same. Because my spiritual teacher, she says to me, and when she said this to me, I got so mad. She goes, she goes, don't put me on a pedestal because I'll be the first one to disappoint you. And when she said that, I was like, how can you say that to me? You're never going to disappoint me. And then it sank in and I was like, she's right. She's right. Because we do have it happens so often where like people idolize and you're like, no, like stop doing that. Stop doing that. We all have our own beautiful gifts. We show it in different ways. And it's like, don't put anybody on a pedestal. It's all the same across the board. My rant is over.
No, I mean, that was a mic drop moment right there.
We go like
have
this.
some wisdom.
You know, I don't know if it's apparent, but this is one of the things I'm struggling with right now.
The thing you didn't want me to address.
Well, not the anger. That's fine, but the my cynicism and my jadedness, and yeah, it's how do I lean into that natural power that I have, but handle it responsibly and just be okay with what I'm doing with it. And that's I think the problem is I'm someone who can command a room by walking into it.
Mm-hmm.
But the only time I feel it's appropriate to do it is if I'm up on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a time that's been designated for me to be in the spotlight. And it's not taking away from anyone at that point. And I'm not on a stage anymore the way I used to be. I mean, it's a different stage. And I listen to the episodes that I do on my podcast and the episodes that I do when I'm a guest, and it's night and day. Because when someone comes on my podcast, I don't do much talking because I feel like I've brought someone on to give them the floor. And I'll talk for maybe 20% of the time. But if you have me on your podcast as a guest, oh, it's fair game. It's like, oh, it's on. But to see the way that I command that stage at that point, it's like, why can't I bring this to my show every week? And it's like, wait, I make the rules for my show. Why can't it be that? But it goes back to that life that I talked about, especially the one was the Has He Been Humbled life, because the biggest takeaway from that life was being in a position of power and standing on stage and saying to the crowd, everyone, look how great I am. Look how amazing I am. When I had the opportunity to say, hey, everyone, look how amazing I am. But all of you can be this amazing or more amazing too. That's the opportunity that I let pass me by in that life. I could have done that and I should have done that. And I don't feel shame for that or whatever, or guilt. I feel shame and guilt for any time I don't do that in this life.
Right.
But that's where it's that feeling of, oh, I've been brought on another podcast to shine in that moment. I'm not going to outshine the host, let the host do their thing, because it's like knowing my place. But why can't I show up that way all the time? And that's something that I sit there asking myself. And I don't know so where that line is, because the other question becomes, well, is it only special because I'm not showing up that way all the time? It's again, it can't just be a simple thing. I can't just not think about these things. but there are worse problems to have. I'll put it that way.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting. Like, this is sparking ideas for me because, like, on the one hand, I almost feel like that's kind of the nature of podcasting, that like you bring people on to hear from them. And so then you kind of become the interviewer versus the interviewee, and the interviewee talks a lot more. Like, that's kind of the natural dynamic, right?
Mhm.
On the other hand, the question that kind of arose in me, and I wonder if it's because when it's your podcast, you feel like you have this strong connection to your audience. You're so much more aware of them listening versus when you're a guest, even though you know people are going to listen, you don't have that connection to the audience to think about them listening in that way. So you don't feel the same need to hide because you're kind of like, you don't know me. I don't care if you see me. Versus when it's your audience, it's more of that feeling and thinking of how they're going to perceive you. And so you more want to hide.
So here's the paradox on that one.
Yeah.
I feel more comfortable with the people who listen to my podcast because I feel like they know me. So anytime
Okay.
I say something stupid, which is basically every episode at one point, because I have another rule where I always like to make the guests feel comfortable. So I say, if you say something stupid, I'm going to say something 10 times worse. But I feel like it's okay with the audience because they know me. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just Daniel being Daniel. I mean, there's that fear of what if someone's listening to this for the first time? They're like, oh my God, this guy's a monster. But
Yeah.
that's what's weird is I feel more comfortable with the audience for mine because I
Right.
feel like they get it. Like, because when you meet someone, a lot of times they don't get you until they've spent time getting to know you.
Right.
And I'm like, at
Yeah.
this point, they know me. Like it's, like who knows? Like, I don't think I haven't said anything too atrocious today, but you never know. Whereas I could have said something here and somebody like, oh my God, but same on Time of Spirituality, be like, oh, it's Daniel. It's fine.
Okay, I get you. And you know what? It's still the 7. The difference is I was interpreting it as like, okay, maybe you're hiding a little bit more on your show. And no, 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 it's the opposite, but still the 7. It's that on your show, you're more your authentic self because the 7s, they tend to wear a mask out in public. So when you go on someone's show, that's where you wear your mask of this is who I'm showing up as, and you're maybe not as much your authentic self. Does that resonate at all or feel true?
E- to an
To an extent.
because it's understanding the audience of the show.
Right.
And where I know when I'm going on to an astrology podcast to talk about past lives, I can incorporate a lot of astrology and I can make a lot of astrology jokes.
Yeah.
Because I get the audience. Whereas if I'm going on to, like I say, a comedy podcast, I got to come at it like I'm speaking to someone who has never heard about this stuff before.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and kind of make a lot of jokes that I wouldn't normally make because I got to meet them where they are.
Mhm.
And but here's the thing is I enjoy that. I
Yeah.
enjoy the challenge of, because I feel like I'm still showing up authentically. I'm not
Yeah.
changing who I am. I'm just showing a different facet of my personality.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I was wrong. It's not the 7s. Yana, you want to tell him what number this is?
Ooh.
Okay,
I'm
I
not.
will. It's the 8s. So the 8s are chameleon energy. So it's not that you're
Yes.
wearing a mask, it's that you are changing your colors to appear,
Mhm.
as you need to. Again, I also have 8s in my chart in my common use name. So first and last, but not my birth certificate name. So I sometimes struggle because again, in my birth name, I have those 7. So I sometimes struggle to say, am I wearing a mask? Am I not being my true self? Or is this true to me? And it's just my 8s kind of changing my colors based on my environment. So I have to sit with it sometimes and say, what's going on? What's at play? Am I hiding my true self? Or is this just a shade of my true self that maybe doesn't show up everywhere? And that's okay. And it's still me. So it
Mhm.
sounds like actually the wrong number. We was the wrong
Well,
number.
hold on a second. Hold on. This is why I was like, wait, where's she going with this? Because the 16-7 still applies. The 16-7 applies. It's not just 7, because the 16 relates to everybody. It's that relatability. It's like you have friends and you know people from all walks of life.
True.
Right. So it's like I can talk to person A and I could talk to person Z and everybody in between, and I can relate and carry a conversation. So it is also that 16-7, and it is the 8-8 chameleon. You just have like all this gift of gab stuff here.
Well, and
which
it's
is amazing.
interesting because, you know, before when I gave Daniel a little bit of a breakdown of what the numbers are in your chart. And I had told you that you have 3 numbers that I feel like are ideal for podcasters. And that's the 16-7, because they can take high level concepts and explain them in an accessible way. So it's, you know, speaking this really accessible way. The 17-8, which is a grounded expression into society. That is the great orator number. So when you talk about you love to be on stage, you love speaking, I'm like, that's the 17-8 energy, which is why I'm like, why didn't I start to think about the 8 sooner? And then there's that 14-5 as a soul destiny. This, you know, it's said to be the number of you're going to write a memoir, but I've always said, or start a podcast, right? In today's modern age, starting a podcast.
I get that with the 12-3 too. The whole
Yes.
podcasting, YouTube channel, like it's about putting
Yes.
something out there, using your voice to express, and just let it expand out into the universe. And the fact that you have that, now
Well,
I
it's
don't have your
4 of
chart in
them.
front of me, but his 12-3 is in a goal aspect.
So basically the 16-7, 17-8, and 12-3 are the spiritual triangle, and then 14-5
Yeah, but
is soul
where is the
destiny
12-3?
as goals.
Okay, goals. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
when I see a 12-3 goals, I'm like, podcast, YouTube channel, get yourself out there, put something out there to where, because that 12-3 is, I'm always busy. I want to try everything and do everything. So you don't want to burn out. So when I see that 12-3 in a goal aspect, I'm like, do a podcast where you put out the episode and then it just lives on. And then it monetizes itself. And now you could still go do this thing over here while that podcast still lives on. So, I mean, clearly your chart is showing us exactly where you're at right now. Not to say that like, this is it, but
Well,
like,
better not be.
it's not, it never is. But it's like, it's just like confirming like you are on path with where your soul is trying to take you, your soul's plan. And it's so beautiful when you get to sit down with somebody and you look at the chart and you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, like I see the journey, and you're actually on the journey, you know, because in our work, we do get a lot of people, as I'm sure as you do, where they're like, I'm stuck in life. I don't know what to do. I don't know what my dream is. I don't know what my goal is. I don't know direction. I know nothing. And then like you get to sit there and go, okay, let me help at least give you some guidance or something that could resonate with you. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And that is like such a beauty part of it. Now, I will say when I first started this too, I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk to people who are on their journey. But what I have found the most joy in, like you, is when I get people who book a reading and they're in front of me and they're like, I just started walking my path, my spiritual path, and I just had this awakening and I want to know how to stay on it, how to keep going, how to stay in that alignment. And that brings me the most joy, because now you're like, yes, I can be a part of this. And then when I get a 14-5, I'm like, oh, listen, if you ever write that book, I would like that autographed copy. Please send it to me. Like, let me know when it's coming. You know, it's this joy where it's like, you can see the journey and the path that someone can go on. And you're like, if I can have even like this much hope that I can give you, or direction or guidance, something that's going to go, okay, I know what my next step is and this feels good. That's like, that's just like the best. And actually that reminds me, are we all friend watchers here? Friends, the show?
Yeah.
How you doing?
When
Could I be wearing any more clothes? I probably should have led with that one.
I love Okay, it's when Phoebe tells Joey.
Hi. Sorry, that was the last one.
Wait, which one was that? Ross?
Yeah.
Okay. It's when Phoebe and Joey is going on that telethon, right, to raise money. And she's like, and Phoebe's point is like, no good deed, like there's no selfless good deed, which you touched upon earlier, right? And she's like, yes, it is. I'm going to show it. So she calls in and she donates all this money. And then she's at the end, she's like, oh, I feel so good because Joey got on TV because of her donation. And then it went to that whole like, she's right. Like there is nothing that's truly selfless. No good deed is selfless completely. You know, there is that little bit of, yes, that little bit of like, what's the word? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's something where like it's self-serving.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what that part is for me in this work. It's the joy of seeing somebody, because I think what's happened, at least for me, and I'm sure you guys can relate, it's not like a reading and you're done. Like I have built relationships with many of these people and we follow each other's journey, and then you will randomly like connect on something and it's like, it's just so rewarding, you know, because you're like, we're all affecting each other's lives every day, whether we realize it or not. And then it's like, am I affecting somebody in a beautiful, positive way? Or am I not? Right. And that's when you're like, oh, okay, that's the ego and I got to follow the higher path self. But that
I mean,
is
the stuff I should be worried about. I'm thinking of everything you just said right now.
I know it's in there. Anyway.
I just gotta well, I mean, I think that's what not to put myself on that pedestal too much. I think that's what I try to lean into, but just to be okay with it and to feel that sense of accomplishment from just that.
Yeah.
And I see Lauren teeing up something I just want to spit out there really quick. That now I'm afraid that I'm gonna get, backlash for leading off with how you doing, because of course that's what I associate. That's my favorite Friends line. But then it's like, well, when does Joey do that? It's like, so now are they going to think that I'm some like, misogynistic monster that
No.
Oh my God. Give your 10 ones a break with the self-criticism.
And then it's like, have I done the Barbara Streisand effect now by calling attention to it when I should just let it go? Because no one would have saw that. But,
I think both are true. Both are true, but it was also a teachable moment that the 10 ones are so self-critical. So you're just, demonstrating the numbers. Well, all I was going to say, really, because yes, I was teeing up a thought, is, there are so many people, right? Like we're allowed to be a little bit selfish, right? Like as humans, we're allowed that. And there's so many people that in their selfishness do harm to others, right? That their selfishness hurts others in their community or directly on a one-to-one level. So if only we could all find our selfishness through being selfless, the world would be a much better place. But let yourself have that. Anyone who's like, yeah, I love to give, but I give because I feel so good, let yourself feel good about it, okay?
Yeah.
There are worse ways to feel good.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think anyone needs to be altruistic fully. Like it's just like you say, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like even if you are feeling good from doing that thing, awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I won't go into details, but like, yes, I did something altruistic a few weeks ago. And man, I rode that high for the rest of the day, if not into the next day. You know what? And I felt good about it.
That's amazing. Listen,
That's
Daniel, it has been an absolute pleasure.
Wait, can I ask you guys one question really quick?
Yeah.
Please.
Because I feel that was a wind down. So with regards
Sense the tone, friends.
As I try to think of a Friends quote really quick, and I'm just coming up with that. I can't come up with anything Monica, but I'll be Phoebe. I know no one can hear it or see it that I'm gonna throw my hands.
Go watch on YouTube, everybody.
That's right.
My question for you guys is with the component of what you guys do with soul contracts and with the name, is I am very interested in what you guys are doing and with numerology and things like that. But I am 37 years old now. I don't know if kids are in my future, but I have this thing where I'm like, until I know for sure that I'm never going to have kids, I am never going to learn any system that has to do with names, because what would I be doing if I knew it like the back of my hand and being like, okay, well, I like this name for my kid, but oh, wait, nope, don't want them to be a psychopath, so gotta, make their name this, or, oh, I want them to, be this, so I got it. So like, how do you guys rectify that, because I don't know if you guys are gonna, have kids or have more kids. So how do you, like,
I
if
mean,
so,
we
like,
do
how do you?
baby naming. Like that is something you can hire someone in our field to do, is to take that into account and look at what would that chart be and how do you find the right name. And we actually, in part of our training, at least when I had my training, we had the ability to, someone had a friend who had just had a baby, and we actually named that baby kind of together as a group, which was really beautiful. And it is a really interesting process of trying to feel what energy is that child already giving and presenting. And we're just trying to find the name that already represents the energy that they are showing and kind of projecting to the mother and bringing that forth, and not giving them any unnecessary challenges. And so part of what we do is we actually look at the entire family, because what we can do as practitioners is, how does this fit with the family? And how can we have the set up this child and the family for the success by how their charts all work together? So we actually lean into it in this work.
And
Oh man.
the thing is too, there's this in our work, we can see where there's karmic clashes. Okay. So
Yeah.
for example, when we do look at, for this baby naming example, you want to make sure that you and that child don't have these clashes where you're going to butt heads, or there's going to be trust issues, or there's going to be something that's going to be hard to overcome together. Right. So for example, I didn't know about this when I named my daughter. And we actually have a karmic clash 6-6. The 6-6 is that Taurus energy. It's stubborn and strong-willed. And she's got so much of it. And I will say, I remember from the moment she was born, I knew, although I didn't know about the 6-6 and all of this stuff, but I knew that she embodied that from the second she like came out of me. That's who she was. So now to see that we both have that karmic clash, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this with her. I will not go to war with her. I am actually going to now, it's like you're able to look at things from a different perspective. Okay, I know that handling or treating certain situations is going to cause more resistance, because both of our stubbornness is going to kick in. So as a parent, I'm like, I'm going to approach it in a way where she feels she still got what she wanted, and I still got to accomplish the thing that, as an adult and a parent, you're like, this is the right move and this is how it should play out, kind of thing, in a beautiful way where we don't have to do this. And it comes from a place of complete love and understanding that this may be a challenge for her. How can I help her through it? And that really is such a beautiful thing when you're able to see it from that point of view, because no matter what the frequency is, no matter what shows up in a chart, there is a challenging aspect and there is a beautiful talent goal aspect, right? It's like, no, you're not meant to stay in the challenge and karmic aspect of any frequency. You're meant to come on the other side. So when you're able to see it as a parent, you're like, okay, my kid's going to be unfocused. The 6-6s are very unfocused, and they're stubborn. They have zero follow through. They're just like all over the place now, but it's a very creative energy. So I always make sure to keep her creating, to keep her painting and playing with colors, somewhere to help her break through that karmic aspect. Right. So that's the beauty of getting to know what your child's numbers are, what their frequency, what's going on, and how that's going to play out for them. Because then you can like help guide them in the most beautiful way. And that is why, when and if you have a child, we know this, your child's going to choose you for your good and for your bad. And one of the beautiful things that a child would choose you for, Daniel, is for this beautiful spirituality and insight that you have. And now you're going to help them break through and see things in a much different way than someone who is not open to that and doesn't, maybe, I don't want to say not understand, but they're just closed off to that part of their life and that connection to source. So that is a beautiful gift. Like, I know that's part of why my daughter chose me, so I can help her break through that stuff earlier. And it is such a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And I can't wait for you to experience that one day. And you, Lauren.
If you want to, right?
If
She's
you want,
not
of course,
pushing
if you want
anything.
to. No. If, but I mean, he brought up kids, so clearly that's something that you would like to have. If you have it, great, and if not, that's okay too, you know. But if that
Well, I
is
think it's
some,
more of the fear of having that power of like,
Yeah.
oh, is my child going to be the Messiah because I've mastered this system? And
no, and that's the
I don't think I
thing.
would want to have the Messiah child though, because
No, but they are again,
sorry, it's
everybody
a
has their
reflection of that now.
stuff. So your child too is going to go through their stuff too, no matter what, because everybody does. And then
I mean,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, and, we really believe that we do choose our name. So, like, part of it is that, I think once you're into the system, trusting that, okay, this name has come to me and I'm feeling like this is meant to be their name, and kind of looking at the charts and being like, okay, maybe it's not what I would choose, but I am just feeling that this child is telling me this is their name. And part of it is going to be trusting that as well. That, hey, this soul of their free will has chosen these lessons and I am just meant to be the vehicle and give it to them. And if it's on their path to change it later, then okay, and I'll help them with that.
Okay, so last question for you, Lauren.
Yes.
If that happened, you felt that, and then you went in and did your calculations, you're like, this kid's gonna be a real asshole. You know, what do you do at that point?
You change your spelling.
You can. I think that's the thing, because one of the things that I am learning is to trust myself and to feel into situations and to be like, okay, did my intuition give me that name? Did my ego give me that name? So I'm really hoping by the time I'm in that situation, I have really mastered that skill more to really know and not be like, what's going on? But also to say again, if the child is choosing me as a parent, they know I have this skill. They know I'm going to run these charts. There's one number, the 21-3, which is about overcoming hardship, but it attracts hardship. And that's what we usually say. We're going to try to avoid giving that to a child. So if I looked up a chart and I had a 21-3, I would be like, kid, are you sure about this? I would not give this to you if it were up to me. And then sit with that. It's like, I don't think you want this.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are responsible.
We
Thank
try.
you.
We try. But don't put that label on us, okay? We try.
Don't put us on a pedestal.
That's right.
Oh, okay. Then I'm looking at you at an
Peer to
eye height
peer.
then. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
So hats off.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm going to shut up now, but thank you for having me.
Oh
Thank
my
you for
goodness. I think
coming.
we could clearly have continued to talk for hours.
I mean,
Very
obviously, you're going to have to come back.
I'm
Yes.
cool with that. And you guys
Yeah.
will be on my show too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Done.
It's been said twice now. So
So it's got to happen 2 more times.
so I got to work with the rule 3. You guys are going to come on Timeless Spirituality, right? Timeless
Yes.
Spirituality. New episodes every other Tuesday. And
Okay.
Timeless Spirituality. It's got to plug the
Beautiful.
show too.
Why don't you let
Because I
people
can.
do.
So why
Right,
don't you
it's
let
okay.
people know everywhere that they can find you?
It's okay. It's appropriate to
Of
be in the
course
spot
it
right now.
is. Yes.
Okay. Gotta want to make sure. Okay, that was a bad joke. All right.
Uh-huh.
How you doing? So, could I be making any worse jokes?
That is amazing. Go
You
ahead.
guys can reach me on Instagram at the Past Life Regressionist. My website is thepastliferegressionist.com. And my podcast is Timeless Spirituality.
And they can find that where?
Timeless Spirituality?
Where can they find your
Spotify,
podcast?
Apple.
Oh, I mean on all the major platforms.
Okay, beautiful.
And I make some corny jokes there too. And sometimes they land, sometimes they don't. So
I will say, as someone who has been listening to the podcast for 2 years, it's a great listen, y'all, especially if you want to hear more of Daniel's story and how he really got into past life regression. He really goes into the fact of he was not totally open to this at first. I was not trusting and was needing to verify. And you get to hear a lot more about that story. So I highly recommend, honestly, going back to season 1. He has a great new season out now, the series of Home. And we haven't even talked about that at all, but I think it's a great representation of that 14-5 energy. But personally, if you are new, I say go back to season 1 because there are some great, great episodes right from the beginning.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
your support.
Thank you for joining. I mean, it is such an honor to have you here. I've said for such a long time, like I would listen to the car and I would pause and I would talk back. So it's so exciting to actually have a conversation. And clearly it had we had so many things to say, right? So it was clearly always meant to be.
This was fun. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad I came. And just thank you guys for having me. And I mean, most of all, just thank you for holding up that mirror for me today, because I don't know, I think I've learned a thing or four about myself today. So just
Yeah.
thank you for your help. And you know, by extension, I can't wait to see what you guys do with the show and all the people that you help. So thank you, because
Thank
you have helped me
you.
today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this was not the direction I thought the episode would go. I thought we were just trying to talk about different past lives, and we went so deep into your personal life. So thank you for being vulnerable and opening and letting us take it in that direction, because I think it turned into such an incredible conversation and episode that people are really going to take a lot out from.
My
Yep.
pleasure. Just thank
Yeah.
you for the opportunity to grow.
I feel like we could go into this thank you
I
for a
probably
long
could keep
time.
Totally. Go
going,
ahead.
yeah.
Close this out, Lauren.
So
Yeah.
everybody go ahead, head over to our Instagram, to the Let's Talk Vibes podcast. Let us know what you thought. What numbers do you share with Daniel? What experiences do you have the same? What are some of your thoughts on putting people on pedestals? And go over to our website, theltvpodcast.com, if you need to get a free version of your chart so you know what numbers you have, what lessons you're learning this lifetime.
And as always, everybody, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment on our content, no matter where you're listening or watching. It is the best way to support us, and we very much appreciate it. Have a blessed day and see you next time.